welcome to Sunday Synth Chat. Thanks for joining me today. I thought it might be an interesting topic if we talk a little bit about inspiration, in particular as it relates to synthesizers. What do you find inspirational about a synthesizer, or is there anything? Is it just another tool to use for your songwriting or music creation or production, maybe, or your live performances? Do you draw any inspiration from synthesizers? If so, what do you think causes that? I was reading some comments, I think on a YouTube video earlier this week. I don't remember exactly the source now. I should have written it down. But the discussion was around connecting with an instrument, I believe. And I've talked on my channel a few times before about not being able to connect with an instrument for one reason or another. For example, I'm connected with it, but I did a video recently about the Op6 and about the key bed, and about how when I hooked up the 61 key Arturia and used it as a controller for the Op6, how it was really a huge difference in the way that keyboard spoke to me, I guess. The sounds already were really good, but the interface, the interaction between myself and the keyboard weren't that great. So when I took the opportunity to try a different controller, it made a huge difference. It interestingly made the keyboard a little more inspiring. Now, I will say the Op6, just the sounds and the interface minus the keys, so the controllers, up the real-time controllers and whatnot, make it a very inspirational synthesizer for me already. But when you take what's 90% really good and add the other 10% to it with better keys, it really put that keyboard over the top for me. So interesting. Like, I kind of wonder about, I mean, the sounds, I think, of any instrument you play should be inspiring to some extent. I know it's hard to sit down and, well, here's a good example. I've discussed recently about changing my live rig for the band I play with to remove the Korg Karma from that setup. It had some really nice synthesizer and pad sounds, but the piano really was a struggle to play and to feel good about the sound that was coming out. So while the keyboard itself was nice, actually the Karma keybed is one of the favorite ones I've played. It feels really good. It's got good action. It feels good in your hands. And so interestingly, the keyboard itself was inspiring, but the sounds really were kind of a letdown. So I guess in my opinion, the sound of the instrument is job one. If you don't have good sound, I really think it just kind of doesn't matter after that how many other good features the keyboard has. You may not agree, and I'd be interested to hear your counterpoints to that. But that's been my experience so far. The Korg Poly 6 that we've rebuilt over the last almost 2 years is up and running. It's solid. It's all the controls are working. But what I found with that, well, and let me back up. The key bed that Korg put in that one, I think probably was a result of trying to keep the price of the synth down, which, I mean, everybody still does that mostly today. But the key bed that they chose to put in there has been problematic over the years for a lot of Poly 6 owners. The contacts are, I guess, unreliable, or need to be clean. Like, I guess maybe they're not sealed up good. I'm not sure. But bad contacts seem to be a common problem, second only to the bad battery design where the battery leaks out on the main board. But my experience was when I first got the keyboard and put it together, I was okay. Like, the fact that I had a Poly 6, I could get around how the key bed felt. And so I have been. But what I've discovered, and this may be a part of the contacts problem, is if I don't release just so when I let off a note, I start running into a lot of double triggering. It's almost like as I'm releasing, I guess I'm killing the contact, but not fast enough, and so it's restriking some of the notes. It doesn't happen all the time, but definitely depending on how I'm playing, which I think my technique changes a little bit depending on what kind of a patch I'm playing. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the way it feels to me. And I think that's proven a little bit by the double triggering on the Poly 6 keys. But the point is, the Poly 6, just in and of itself, the keyboard, the sounds, is largely inspiring. I can sit down and just tweak a patch and just play. I mean, I'm not playing anything fancy. I'm not writing something. I'm just enjoying the sound of the keyboard. And with all the controls on the Poly 6, that's easy to do. But again, the key bed is a little distracting. However, everything else, in my opinion, overcomes it. Similar to the Op 6. Like, I'm not getting rid of it just because I don't care for the size of the key bed and the feel of the key bed. I'm going to keep it because I think it's a great instrument. Same with the Poly 6. So again, I think a lot of it comes back to sound for me. If I got, junky piano sounds out of the Op 6, I may have more of a struggle hanging on to it and being satisfied with it the way that I am. Some of the instruments that I've played, like the ARP Omni, you play that instrument and you just kind of realize, I don't know, I found myself thinking a lot about the history of that synthesizer and the history of the company, and just really had an opportunity to appreciate the sounds. Of course, we had to do a lot of work on one of those for a buddy to get it up and running. So we knew that synthesizer pretty well by the time we got finished with it. But then once it's, sitting in the studio and you have it turned on and, this is ARP Omni, this is really cool. I found just being able to play and listen and think about the history made a big difference. If that had been a company, same keyboard from some off-brand company, like, I don't know what kind of joy I would have found in playing it, but knowing the history of ARP and their legacy in the synth world made that a cool instrument to play. The same with the sequential Prophet 600 that we've worked on a couple of different times for a buddy of mine. I mean, anything with the name Prophet on it, sequential, is going to have a good sound, I think. I mean, at least the ones I've played, I'll put it that way. But there's history there. I mean, you can appreciate the history of the company, the innovation, the fact that you're playing this instrument that was, created by some real trailblazers in the world of synthesizers, makes those inspiring, in my opinion. The looks of instruments are important to me. I know that's not important to everyone, but it is important to me. I don't actually know who is interested in this, in the look of the Moog Grandmother, but I didn't choose it just because of the color scheme, but I was excited that I was getting the Moog Grandmother partially because of the way it looked. I do think that the colors they chose for the Grandmother and the Matriarch probably are largely polarizing, and that may be part of the reason they came out with their dark versions. But that being said, the look of the instrument is important to me. If you've watched my M1 video, one of the things I like about the M1 is just the minimal look of it. I mean, it's just, there's not much to it on the surface. I love the look of the Op6. It looks like a spaceship. I mean, it's really a cool instrument to look at. Instruments don't have to look great, but it helps. For me, it helps. It helps me just be drawn to it and want to connect with it. Probably the same as with when people go out and buy a new car. Not always, but I'd say a whole lot of the time, they want to have some kind of attraction to the car, the way it looks, inside, outside, whatever. But I think there's some appeal in most of us to the way things look. So, I'm not getting into any kind of software. I have found, just real briefly, the software sounds you can get to use are amazing, just almost indescribable how good and how many there are. But I have found over the last several months that having a really nice controller keyboard to interact with those sounds has been really important for me. It's made a huge difference in that connection between myself and the machine, to have, in this case, the Arturia to interface with the Mac. It's really been night and day difference. You want to play these software sounds now, and you want to turn it up, and you want to, try to change the settings as you go, play things in real time, and so that has made a big difference. But on the hardware side, even on the DW6000 back there, one of the things that I think is cool about the looks of that keyboard is just, it looks like an 80s machine, and I'm not saying 80s are the best, but it looks different than the rest of what I have in my studio, which are mostly more modern synthesizers. So that's one of the things that just appeals to me about that keyboard. If you've ever seen the front panel, it's got all the parameters that you can adjust laid out with their number on them. It tells you what it is, tells you their value range. It's kind of cool. It's different than a lot of things are done today. And so all this to say, the look of an instrument, the feel of an instrument, oftentimes the history of an instrument, definitely the sounds of an instrument are all things that I find to be inspiring when I sit down and play a keyboard. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to share today about inspiration. So what do you find inspiring when you choose a keyboard to play, or when you have an opportunity to play something maybe you don't already have? What inspires you about a keyboard to, just to play, or, produce, write, perform, whatever? What is inspiring about a keyboard to you? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you, love to hear your thoughts on this topic. If you're interested, I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. I think, being a part of a YouTube group, if you want to call it that, is valuable for a lot of us. I can interact with you guys, and I always enjoy doing that. But also you can interact with, among yourselves in the comment section. There's a lot that we can all learn from each other. And so that's one of the goals that I have for this channel, is just, I want to learn more. So I feel like having discussions and, interaction is the easiest way to do that. So appreciate you taking the time to hang out today, and we will return in another week or so with the next Sunday Synth Chat. See you then. Thanks.